It's just immature. Those questions are sophomoric and stupid and a waste of everybody's time. Nobody knows.
How many people die is as stupid, and so you sound like somebody who doesn't have anybody in the service.
All right, guys, welcome back. It's Lucas. And today we are exposing something that should make every single American with a family member in uniform absolutely furious. Because Bill O'Reilly just sat on live television, got asked how many American soldiers might die in this war, and called it sophomoric and stupid. Yeah, you heard that right. The lives of your kids, your brothers, your sisters, your parents in uniform. Sophomoric and stupid to even ask about. Hit that like button and subscribe to Lucas Speaks right now, because we do not let that kind of contempt for American lives slide. Now let's get into it.
People, according to polls, Fox polls are the greatest, but they're coming around to, look, this is a dangerous situation. There was a window of opportunity in history to come in and get the bad guys, and the Persian people were rebelling, so this was the time to do it. But it's important that people understand this is exactly like Afghanistan after 9/11. It's exactly the same campaign. And what the Bush administration told the American people was, look, we got to go in and get these Taliban out of there because they're protecting the al-Qaeda people who killed us. And we can't allow that. And the nation basically said, okay. And that happened. And it didn't happen with many casualties. The problem was that the Bush administration tried to nation build, which is impossible in a place like Afghanistan or Iraq. It's a tribal country. It's never going to change. Persia is a little bit different. More sophisticated population. They seem to want some semblance of freedom. And that's why President Trump moved. He didn't want to move. I spoke with him lengthy on the phone, and he offered the mullahs a really good deal to get out of this, to give up their nuke program and their ballistic missiles. And the United States and other countries would then rebuild their economy, help them with safe nuke energy. And the mullahs just basically said, blank you, we're not going to do it. So if you're president and you know there is a clear and present danger because you know that the mullahs are reconstituting their nuclear program after being bombed out last June, you know that, and then the Persian people are on the uprise, you're going to do it. And you're not going to confer with Chuck Schumer before you do it. Because Chuck will run out and tell everybody everything. And President has 60 days, 6-0, to do any kind of military action he wants under the banner of national security.
Right. I mean, look, what's different here from 9/11 is, one, we were attacked on 9/11. And two, Bush had Congress, they voted now on Fugazi information because of the yellow cake weapons of mass destruction lies that they told. But he never declared war unilaterally, and President Trump just did. Stephen A., how does that factor to you?
Well, I think that has to have that has to be a factor because, you know, he's going to have his cynics, and Bill O'Reilly repeatedly, whether he's writing his columns or whether he's doing his show, repeatedly reminds us about how much the Democrats hate President Trump, and he's absolutely right because we see it in their behavior, we see it in their attitude towards him, and they disagree with everything that he does. We understand that, but still in all, that doesn't completely absolve the president. For example, you know, when you talk about neutralizing Iran's nuclear capabilities, that's something that the president bragged about. So it's not beyond the pale for cynics and critics to ask the question, well, since you were bragging about it even during the State of the Union address about how you had neutralized them, what was the urgency for now? Why did this need to be done now? What capabilities did they truly have when you just finished telling us you neutralized their capabilities? Those kind of things add fodder to the critics and the cynics who don't trust a damn thing that he says. It doesn't make them right, but the reality is that there's plenty of people in the United States of America who don't trust him as far as they could touch him. It's just that simple. And they look at it from the standpoint that this is a man that can't be trusted, and they're wondering about what his agenda is in the Middle East. When you went over to Qatar, when you went over to Saudi Arabia, when you went into the Middle East and you were doing whatever it was that you were doing over there, and then you find yourself in this position where you've attacked Iran. You did it in concert with Israel, and everybody knows Benjamin Netanyahu and what he wants to do, what he's always wanted to do to Iran. So they take those things into consideration. Again, Bill comes from a very educated position, somebody that speaks to the president directly. So we're not here, I'm not here to question his facts. I'm just simply saying when it comes to the cynics and the skeptics and what they have to say, from afar, from a distance, you do find yourself scratching your head and saying, make it make sense. You said they didn't have any capabilities, really, and now here you are saying that's justification for bombing, and then uttering the word war when you didn't necessarily go to Congress to do it. Yes, the Gang of Eight was addressed by Marco Rubio, and we get that. We got that part. We understand that, and you shouldn't have to inform 535 people because they would let it out. Bill's absolutely right about that. That's true. But somehow, some way, whatever protocol is necessary and ordinary, is not something this president is prone to do, which elevates the level of suspicion thrown in his direction.
I think that's a fair analysis. I think that's a fair analysis, but you have to understand a couple of things. That the goal of this, if you want to be honest about it and stop playing political games, which I despise, is to get rid of the theocracy. Yeah. That's the goal. And there was a window
they say that's
to do
not
that.
The goal.
That is the goal. Get rid
they won't even
of
list
the
it.
theocracy. Look, Cuomo, you can quote 55 people. I'm telling you, the goal is to break the mullah's stronghold on Iran. That is the goal. Were they reconstituting nukes? Yes. Were they within days of a breakout? No. But there was a window of opportunity to break them. And it's still undefined. But the most important thing for President Trump is it's a huge risk.
Huge.
Personally for him. Huge.
Yeah, huge.
Because if
how
it
many
doesn't
service
work,
members die? How long does it take? I mean, that's why I know even the IDF says
that's just immature,
it doesn't take 3 weeks.
Look, if you know anything about war, that's just immature. Those questions are sophomoric and stupid and a waste of everybody's time. Nobody knows.
How many people
long.
die is as stupid, and so you sound like somebody who doesn't have anybody in the service, Bill, because let me tell you something. If you were worried about him not coming back, it's not sophomoric, it's not stupid. You have families who are never the same because of the price of the commitment.
Everybody
it should be valued,
knows
it should be
you
measured.
can't predict war. Everybody knows it.
That's why you go into it the right way and you get votes from Congress and you don't just do it and then see how many die.
It's a bunch
That's
of
not a
baloney.
smart approach.
Bunch of garbage. There hasn't been a president, and Fetterman pointed this out. Fetterman pointed it out. Hasn't been a declaration of war since World War II. Presidents know they have to move, and they have to move fast.
Trump said we're at war with Iran. No president has ever said that unilaterally before. None.
What? So what?
It's against the Constitution. Congress declares war.
He is using a phrase, okay?
Yeah. All right. Stephen, get in there. Help him out. Help out your friend.
Article 2 of the Constitution gives the president the right to do what he did. They can sit up there and they go through the Wars Powers Resolution and all of that. But the bottom line is it's going to be much ado about nothing. It's not going to amount to anything, Chris, because they're going to say he had the right to do what he did. And then when you see what happened today on the Senate, when they voted to support him in that regard, that's much ado about nothing. But I will say this, Bill. Here's the reality. Of course, in war, there's going to be casualties. But it can't be expressed flippantly. You can't have the commander-in-chief coming across as flippant.
I didn't see anybody being flippant.
You just said even asking the question is sophomoric and stupid.
It is stupid and sophomoric and a waste of everybody's time because nobody knows. It's impossible to know. So it's dumb.
Yeah. But no, it's not dumb because you got to think about whether what you're going to do. Look, did they lose anybody the first time they bombed?
There's no answer to it.
I'll give you the answer. Did they lose people the first time they bombed? No. Did they lose people when they went into Venezuela? No. Why? Because of how they did it and how they risk managed. Are they doing that here? No, and that
You
is
don't
why
know
it's
what
such a
they're
dangerous
doing,
decision.
and I don't know what they're doing. Okay?
Well, obviously they exposed people in the region, and that's how they're getting killed.
Listen,
so it's not
a
the same way
country
it was
of
last
90
time.
million.
And we're supposed to know. We're supposed to have some idea what they're doing.
No, listen.
We're supposed to have some idea what they're doing.
They're trying to change
Go ahead,
the
Bill.
regime. That's what
They
they're
say
doing.
they're not, by the way, for what it's worth.
I don't
You
care
are
what they
contradicting the
say.
president and the Secretary of War. You should.
Why?
Right? I mean, so you're just saying we just can't believe them.
I'm saying no.
So you don't
I'm
care
telling
what
you
they say,
they're
but you
trying to
care
do.
about people asking these questions that are sophomoric and stupid in your mind?
Yeah,
I
look,
mean, which one
to
is
waste
it?
it,
So
to-
you don't care? You don't care what they say?
Stephen, maybe you're not offended, but I don't want to waste my time on people going, well, how long is it going to take? Nobody knows. Let's go to the next question.
The people who plan it should
Okay,
know. But
got
let's
it.
take
Go
a
to the
break
next
and we'll
one.
come back and we'll
Baloney.
discuss this.
Baloney.
Okay. Bill, you can feel how you want to feel. It doesn't make you sophomoric or stupid.
So let's talk about what just happened in that clip. Because what Bill O'Reilly revealed in that moment was not just a bad take on a cable news segment. What he revealed was the entire rotting foundation of right-wing war cheerleading in this country, laid completely bare for anyone with eyes to see. And we're going to pull every single layer of it apart right now. Because the American people deserve to understand exactly what they are dealing with when they tune into these shows and watch these men advocate for sending their children to die. Let's start with those 4 words. Sophomoric and stupid, and a waste of everybody's time. Those 4 words. Think about what was actually being asked when Bill O'Reilly decided to throw that tantrum. Chris Cuomo was not asking a gotcha question. He was not playing political games. He was not being partisan. He was asking the single most basic, most fundamental, most unavoidable question that any honest person must answer before they advocate for sending human beings into a war zone. How many of our people are going to die? How long is this going to take? That is not a stupid question. That is the question. That is the only question that actually matters when you strip away all the geopolitical language and the strategic framework and the television tough guy posturing. Real human beings, somebody's child, somebody's parent, somebody's spouse, are going to be placed in harm's way. And Bill O'Reilly's answer to the question of how many of them might not come home is that asking it is sophomoric. Let that tell you everything you need to know about who these people are and what they actually think about the lives of American service members. They are not assets to be protected. They are not human beings with families who will be permanently shattered by their loss. They are props. They are instruments. They are tools to be deployed in service of a foreign policy agenda and then discarded when the conversation about the cost of that agenda becomes inconvenient. And Chris Cuomo was absolutely right to push back the way he did. Because what he said in that moment was not just a rebuttal to O'Reilly. It was a moral statement. He said there are families who are never the same because of the price of the commitment. That is not rhetoric. That is documented reality. We have an entire generation of post-9/11 veterans in this country dealing with traumatic brain injuries, PTSD, lost limbs, shattered marriages, suicide rates that dwarf combat casualties, and a VA system that has been chronically underfunded by the exact same political class that was most enthusiastic about sending them to war in the first place. The cost of these commitments is not abstract. It is not theoretical. It is measured in funerals and in wheelchairs and in families that sit down to Thanksgiving dinner with an empty chair that will never be filled again. And Bill O'Reilly thinks asking about that cost is a waste of everybody's time. That right there is the moral bankruptcy of the modern right-wing foreign policy establishment, expressed in a single sentence. They want the wars. They just don't want to look at what wars actually do to the people who fight them. Now let's talk about the 2 admissions that O'Reilly made before he completely lost his composure, because both of them are extraordinarily revealing and both of them fundamentally destroy the case he was trying to make. The first admission is that he compared this Iran operation directly to Afghanistan. He said it is exactly the same campaign. He said it with confidence. He said it like it was supposed to reassure people. Afghanistan, the war that began in 2001 with a promise of swift, decisive action against the Taliban and ended 20 years later, 20 years, with the Taliban walking back into Kabul and retaking the entire country within days of American withdrawal. The war that consumed over $2 trillion of American taxpayer money, The war that killed over 2,400 American service members and wounded tens of thousands more. The war that left behind a generation of veterans struggling with wounds visible and invisible. The war that accomplished so little that its entire premise, building a stable democratic Afghanistan, collapsed in real time on live television in August of 2021. Bill O'Reilly looked at that 20-year catastrophe and said, "Yeah, this is going to be just like that." And he meant it as a selling point. If the best argument you have for a new war is that it is going to be just like the last disaster, you have not just lost the argument, you have proven beyond any reasonable doubt that you have learned absolutely nothing from the last 20 years of American foreign policy failure. The second admission is even more significant because it strips away every last pretense of what this operation is actually about. O'Reilly said, and these are his words, the goal is to get rid of the theocracy. He said it twice to make sure everyone heard it. The goal is to break the mullah's stronghold on Iran. That is regime change, full stop. Not a targeted strike, not a defensive operation, not a surgical mission to neutralize an imminent threat. Regime change in a nation of nearly 90 million people with one of the largest and most battle-tested militaries in the Middle East, with mountainous terrain that has humbled invading forces for centuries, with deep proxy networks embedded across the entire region, and with a population whose nationalism, whatever they think of their government, will not respond well to foreign bombs falling on their cities. And here's the military reality that O'Reilly and every other armchair hawk on television refuses to acknowledge. You cannot achieve regime change from the air. It has never been done. Not once in the history of modern warfare. Air campaigns can degrade infrastructure. They can destroy military assets. They can kill people. What they cannot do, and what they have never done, is replace a government. Replacing a government requires boots on the ground. It requires an occupying force. It requires years or decades of nation building. The exact thing O'Reilly himself admitted is impossible in this kind of country. So what he is actually describing when he says the goal is to get rid of the theocracy is not a clean surgical strike. He is describing the opening act of a ground war that he either does not understand or does not want to be honest about. And the people who will pay for that dishonesty are not Bill O'Reilly's children. They are yours. Now let's zoom out and look at the bigger picture, because this segment is not just about one television personality having a meltdown. It is a window into an entire media ecosystem that has been manufacturing consent for military adventurism for decades and has faced zero accountability for the damage it has caused. Bill O'Reilly was one of the loudest voices cheerleading for the Iraq War in 2003. He told his audience that the weapons of mass destruction were real. He told his audience the war would be swift and decisive. He told his audience that the mission would be accomplished. Every single one of those things turned out to be catastrophically false. The weapons did not exist. The war lasted nearly 9 years. The mission was so far from accomplished that the country descended into a sectarian civil war that killed hundreds of thousands of people and created the conditions for ISIS to emerge. And what happened to Bill O'Reilly's credibility after being that spectacularly wrong about something that consequential? Nothing. He kept his platform. He kept his audience. He kept his influence. And here he is today doing the exact same thing, making the exact same arguments, using the exact same frameworks, dismissing the exact same concerns about a new war in the same region. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results. And the definition of a broken media system is giving the people who were catastrophically wrong last time a megaphone to be catastrophically wrong again. And let us give credit where it is absolutely due. Because Stephen A. Smith, who nobody would accuse of being a progressive voice on foreign policy, sat in that same room and said something that was more intellectually honest than anything O'Reilly managed to produce in the entire segment. He said that Trump bragged about neutralizing Iran's nuclear capabilities. He said it during the State of the Union. He made it a centerpiece of his accomplishment narrative. And now the same administration is saying the urgency to go to war was driven by the reconstitution of those same nuclear capabilities. Stephen A. Smith asked the question that the entire American media should be hammering every single day. If you already neutralized them, what was the urgency? If you already got the job done, why are we here? That is not cynicism. That is not partisanship. That is the most basic application of logic to a set of public statements that directly contradict each other. And the fact that O'Reilly had no answer to it, that his response was essentially to assert that the goal is regime change and wave away the contradiction, tells you that there is no coherent answer. There is no honest explanation that reconciles those two positions. There is only the hope that the American public is too distracted or too trusting to notice the contradiction. Here is what Lucas Speaks needs you to understand and carry with you after watching this video. The right-wing media apparatus in this country has a formula, and it never changes. Step 1. Identify a foreign adversary and amplify the threat beyond what the evidence supports. Step 2. Dismiss anyone who asks questions about cost, legality, or consequences as naive, weak, or unpatriotic. Step 3. Cheerlead for military action from the complete safety of a television studio, while the actual fighting is done by working-class and middle-class Americans who will never appear on those same television panels to share what the war actually cost them. Step 4. When the war goes badly, as it almost always does, face zero accountability and move on to the next conflict. That is the formula. It worked for Vietnam, it worked for Iraq, it worked for Afghanistan, and they are running it again right now on Iran. The only thing standing between that formula and another generation of broken American families is an informed public that refuses to be manipulated by it. That is why this channel exists. That is why we break this down video after video without pulling punches and without pretending that both sides are equally responsible for what is happening right now. They are not. And we are going to keep saying so. Bill O'Reilly called those questions sophomoric and stupid. We call them the most important questions any American can ask before this country goes to war. How many will die? How long will it take? Who benefits? Who pays? And whether the people demanding this war are willing to look the families of the fallen in the eye and tell them it was worth it. We already know the answer to that last one. They never are. They never have been. And they never will be. If you believe that the lives of American service members are worth more than a television tough guy's war fantasy, hit that like button right now. If you think the media needs to be held accountable for cheerleading wars, they will never have to fight. Share this video everywhere because this conversation needs to reach every household in America. Subscribe to Lucas Speaks and turn on your notifications because we are not done and we are not slowing down. This is where the record gets set straight every single time, and we are just getting started.